Welcome to Moving Conversations, a podcast for movement professionals by movement professionals. If you coach, train, or teach movement, Pilates, or fitness, then this podcast is for you. With more than 60 years of experience in fitness and Pilates, your hosts, Brian Ritchie and Nora St. John, explore the science of human movement, diving deep into the facts, myths, and common misconceptions, hoping to spark thought and conversation about how we view fitness and movement. Now, let's jump into Moving Conversations. And welcome back to Moving Conversations. I'm Brian Ritchie. Joining me as always is Nora St. John. Good morning, Nora. How you doing?
Very well, Brian. Very well. I understand you guys are expecting a great big snowstorm. Actually, not you guys.
Oh my gosh!
This, but everybody else on the East Coast is like freaking out.
It is toilet paper watch around here because you cannot go to a store. It's like everybody assumes we're going to be stranded, desert island stranded. You can't get anything. The grocery stores are completely pilfered. No toilet paper to be had. And I'm thinking, how many people go out and buy a single roll at a time? I mean, come on. We got cases of this stuff usually around the house. So it's always funny to sort of walk to the store. I'm planning to go after I get off work today just to see, because I'm fascinated by this. And the local news will have the breadometer. You know, how bad the storm is how many loaves of bread you should buy. And I'm thinking, how many people are eating this many sandwiches? It's just, I don't get it, but we'll see. Maybe it's worse than we think, but I think we'll get a decent amount of snow, and I just have to figure out if it's going to be enough for me to stay home, or do I trudge through it to get to work, and how many clients I'm going to have. So it's always fun. It's always fun. This is our first big storm in 10 years, so it'll be interesting.
Nice.
Now, for those of you watching on video, you probably see that we do have a guest today, a very, very special guest, and we're unbelievably excited. I'm going to let Nora do the official introduction, but before we do that, do us a favor, hit that like and subscribe button. We really appreciate it. On Instagram, we're Moving Convos. You can also reach us on email at movingconvos@gmail.com. That's the easiest way, but the more times you hit like, subscribe, or comment, we really appreciate it. It helps our algorithms, and it gets us to spread the word a little bit further to people who may not have heard of us. So we really appreciate that. But without any further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Nora.
It is my great honor and privilege to introduce and to welcome our guest of today, Elizabeth Larkam. For those of you who have worked with her, which is many of you, she's been in the Pilates field, and really, I have to say, the greater movement field. Mm-hmm. She's gone so far beyond just Pilates that I feel like that's a small box to put her in. But she's been doing that for over 40 years. And has explored many, many, many avenues, both in terms of movement modalities, in terms of movement research and movement science. And what I love about today's topic is she is coming full circle. So she started at St. Francis Hospital, working with a lot of rehabilitation. Then she developed a really fantastic group reformer program based on the Allegro from Balanced Body. Went on and did many, many years again of rehabilitation work and very specialized work in a lot of different fields and a lot of different environments. And now she's come back to teaching 15 group reformer classes a week. And what I really want to hear from her, and I'm so excited about, is how she's taken all of her background and brought it to the group reformer environment. To make classes more effective, more efficient, and how, to manage multiple issues in a room, like typically happens in a group reformer class. So welcome, Elizabeth. We're so excited to have you.
And can I say, I wish I was in your area, because I would love to be a member of these classes, because I think they would be so interesting to take. I just want to say, so yeah, fanboying out here a little bit, that would be fascinating to see your point of view on a group setting.
Brian and Nora, we could set up a nationwide tour.
There you go.
That would be so fun. Thank you both so much for welcoming me so warmly and for the opportunity to speak with you. Because Nora, I think it's for 37 years now that you and I have been weaving paths through the vines of the Pilates world. And Brian, you and I most recently saw each other at a Pilates conference gala in Shanghai.
Yes.
So we are traversing the globe.
Absolutely.
And it's such a privilege to be in the Pilates world now and to bring our perspectives to share.
Absolutely. I mean, I know for me, just in terms of China, for example, I was first in China in Pilates in 2007, and there was one reformer in the country. Right.
Wow.
So just to see the growth and to have somebody like you bring your expertise to that very growing field and for that growing
Mhm.
environment is fantastic.
Yes, yes. The reason that I moved from the San Francisco Bay Area, where I went to school and developed my Pilates career for 52 years, is that I grew up in Austin, Texas, where 4 generations of my family
Wow.
live now.
Mm.
Mother is 97, and
Wow.
the Allegro One, the very first generation of the Allegro One that Balanced Body manufactured in 1999. Ken Endelman, president of Balanced Body, gave it to me as a present for participating in the nationwide launch of the Allegro for the first ever group reformer classes. And Mother has used this Allegro nearly daily and still has it in her apartment today. So
I
shout
love
out
that.
to our families, to our mothers, where the mitochondria come from, and
That's awesome.
to the how different pieces of equipment, different reformers can bring the benefits of Pilates to people of all generations.
I love that. That's a
That's
wonderful,
awesome.
wonderful, wonderful introduction.
Yes, yeah. When I came to back to Central Texas, now in Georgetown, Texas, just north of Austin, where I have a live-work studio in a home that was built in 1898. When I came back here, I really wanted to sort of get out of my boutique movement studio bubble,
Mhm.
and had the good fortune of being invited when I was at Pilates on Tour, the Balanced Body Pilates on Tour Rehabilitation Summit in Phoenix, or outside of Phoenix. I was mobbed by the instructors from one of the Pilates franchises, and I thought it would be a perfect opportunity to get closer to the center of the bell curve and to experience the enthusiasm for group reformer fitness.
I love that. And something we talked about a little bit before, coming on is Elizabeth has been working in Marin and Mill Valley and in San Francisco. I always worked in like the East Bay of the Bay Area. And a lot of what we did was privates and semi-privates. And that was all stuff in service to really the 5%. And one of the
Mhm.
wonderful things about the group reformer class that we talked about was it's more accessible. Right now, we're actually able to reach a much wider variety, to Elizabeth's point, more the middle of that bell curve and not just that top end. So Elizabeth, what is that like? What have you discovered from that? Obviously many things, but what are some of your takeaways from working with a different population?
Initially, I was terrified.
I can imagine.
I don't blame you. I would be.
I would be.
Because here there are, in this particular studio setting, there are 12 individuals of all different ages, all different volumes, all different experiences in terms of embodiment, and each one with their own specific health condition that they
Mhm.
may or may not be informed about. So the pressure to do no harm was immense.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah,
No
I'd
question.
imagine that's and always in those circumstances, anytime I teach group anything, that is the first thing. That's the foundation is how can I make this safe for everybody in the room, which as you know, is never going to be entirely successful just because it's always a little tricky. And it sometimes means you're going to then disturb those who want, I just want something more. This isn't hard enough, blah, blah, blah. Right. So it's such a fine line, that one to walk. It's always a challenge in a group
I was
environment.
just thinking that either you challenge them and you're beyond what half of the group can do, or you play to the lowest common denominator, and then everybody besides that one person is bored stiff because we're doing the same thing each time. So that's a fine line to walk.
Yes. However, let's not be limited to the two options that you just described.
Exactly.
Because when we can bring in the quote neurological hacks being not a good word, but the neurological underpinnings of each different exercise, then it's possible to engage everybody at their own level of capacity.
Nice.
So one of the tricks would I beg your pardon, an example for that was that yesterday I was teaching maybe more of an intermediate reformer, quote, flow class. And it involved work with this now, take all the springs off the carriage. And first you think like, oh my God, don't do that. But you take all the springs off the carriage and you put the long box on the mat perpendicular to the reformer frame. So each student is supine, lying on their back on their own box, and they have their feet on the carriage. The carriage can only do one thing. It can only slide back and forth. But when you change your orientation with respect to the frame, then suddenly your motor cortex is dealing with a whole different plane. It's not so sagittal anymore. It's the lateral translation in the coronal, the frontal plane. Those individuals who could understand my English, and I always have to apologize and say to them, I may have been teaching for 40 years, but I'm still limited by the fact that I can only teach in English. So today is not, I didn't bring my Ukrainian translator. I didn't bring my Russian translator. So this is who you got. All right. So those who were prepared to lift up in a bridge and recruit a lot more glutes and hamstrings and quote posterior chain or whatever we're calling it, they could do that. But those that needed to keep their whole torso on the box for all good reasons, like hamstring cramps, they could keep their feet on the carriage. And now I'm getting to the point, 5 minutes later. And if you want the carriage to slide to the right, press your tongue into your lower right cheek and go recruit. It won't look very good, but you'll recruit more fibers and go to the right. So at any rate, Nora, I interrupted you ages ago, but that was just an example of how to deal with different capabilities with the same crazy exercise.
I love it. The only thing I was going to say is, having heard you cue for years in many different ways and in many different environments, one of the things that I think is one of your strengths for sure is your cueing makes people pay attention. And I've often found that in order to create challenge, if I can make people pay attention, as long as they're focused on what they're doing and you're encouraging them to maybe experience something they haven't experienced before or feel a new way, it's a challenging exercise. Doesn't matter if it's the simplest thing on the planet. If they're engaged, it feels like they're engaged and it feels like it's challenging. And that's just what I love about what I've always seen you do, which is create challenge through attention, through awareness.
Yes. Thank you, Nora. So many fireworks and light bulbs going on in my memory of the so many different Pilates on tour, the early body, mind, spirit, the video studio at Balanced Body in Sacramento, all of it. However, I think it's my impression that since you and I have been interweaving our vines through the Pilates landscapes, that it's my impression that the world has changed in terms of attention, to keep attention.
Absolutely.
Now, I don't ask when people come in, I greet them warmly. I don't ask them for their list of medications. Okay. I know I could, but maybe I'd rather not know. All right. Okay. Because what I notice is that there is a whole lot of cueing information that's just required to get the job set up.
Yes.
And inevitably, someone didn't get the memo about springs, and
Yep.
someone else didn't get this memo about where the rotator disc goes. So I have had to bite my tongue and change the approach, which is to realize that the only way forward in this environment is to bring an obsessive attention to detail and combine it with compassionate humor. That is the only way we're going to get through it.
Right. I can see that. Because it's like that's the third time that Alice over in the corner asks you, what springs are these? You've said it 4 times already. Alice, the springs are 3. Everybody, what are Alice's springs? Whatever. Right? You've got to find a way to make that comfortable and safe for her. Let the rest of the group know you're not shaming them, and then move forward, but still keep things moving forward.
Yes.
And it's very interesting to hear. I taught group exercise for years. That's sort of how my introduction to the movement, fitness, the world was for what we do. And way back when, again, I'm closer to your age than I'd care to admit, because I've been at this well over 35 years now. And way back then, it was all about just dance, just do the choreography, just do the same thing. And, I'd have like 8 different classes, and I would just choose the music based on what choreography for that class, and the class gets to know it. And after a while, it's literally like you're doing a dance course. I mean, you're just teaching the same choreography, and the new people are trying to keep up. With Pilates, I could see that there's a lot more focus that's necessary. And depending on the instructor and the instructor's background, I could easily see them going into, well, I'm going to do the same 12 things that I do each and every class. And this class is going to get the same workout that my last one did and the next one did. And there could be that rote, this is what it's going to be. And then people will tune out, and people will start chatting. And it'll become more like a hangout session, much more than it is, here's what we're going to do and here's how we're going to focus. But it sounds like you're making them really become attuned to their body, listen to what you're saying, challenge in a way that, let's face it, I don't know any group exercise class, reformer class around here that would even think of putting the box perpendicular, with no springs. When you said that, I thought, I do that, but I don't know if I would have ever thought of that for a group exercise class. So it's fascinating that you would do that, but I can see that gets a different type of engagement, which is fascinating.
Brian, I just love the rapid thumbnail sketch you gave us of your early days in quote, in the business. Because, in the biz, because I can match you right there.
Yeah.
In teaching in the early 80s in the Mission District in San Francisco, 7th and Mission. This was before Reebok came out with their first aerobic shoe.
Wow.
Yep.
Even before leg warmers,
Yeah.
And the movement to music, that was just, it was just such a highlight, because Nora, you and I came out of the contemporary dance and ballet studio settings, and then to be able to teach high impact aerobics to Cyndi Lauper was just like, whoa. However, that time in the business from the early days that you're remembering has prepared me so well to integrate the music now into a group Pilates class. Now, during all the time that we were at St. Francis, the time I was teaching at Western Athletic Clubs, at Yoga Works, you name it, the idea of having music in a Pilates class was heresy.
I was just going to ask.
Joe didn't do that.
Yeah.
Right. And you certainly didn't do it to music. Like they may have had something going on in the background that was, not ideally informing your rhythm, but you certainly wouldn't do it to music.
So true. However, Daniel Levins, I believe that the professor from Eastern Canada, his book, This Is Your Brain on Music, indicates to me that the wiser we are in choosing the soundtrack. And I prefer cello music. I prefer string music, not so much vocals. However, there are exceptions to the rule, because Willie Nelson has been the head of music in Texas, well, forever. So we just have to bring out his album too. Any rate, music can contribute so much to the pleasure of the movement environment. Because I tell people, you listen to my voice, we're cueing this way, and furthermore, and what about? But if you're able to have that lilt over the melodious aspects of different activity in your brain, it can keep someone in the room.
Nice.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, Elizabeth, a couple things, and I'm not quite sure how to address this or how you'll answer it, but one of the things that I was fascinated by when you first started talking about having this conversation was you have done a lot of work with fascia-informed movement, if you will. And certainly movement science has progressed so far in terms of how we move the body, all the ways the body's integrated. And I was just thinking how, again, this is kind of in a nutshell, so but do the best you can with this giant topic. How do you bring that aspect of movement science into your group teaching?
Every day, every minute of every 50-minute class, every hour that I'm in a group Pilates setting, I'm constantly referencing, at least with my own internal compass, constantly referencing what I've learned through the study of fascia research and biotensegrity about the infinite complexity of our structure, our neuromyofascial system. And every time that with an exercise or an exercise continuity, I check it against the map, the current maps that I understand about our structure from an embryological standpoint and a neurological standpoint. So finally, which was my intention when I first read in 2001, when I first read the Thomas Myers book, Anatomy Trains, it was always my intention to look for some physiologically sound foundation for sequencing movement in the Pilates studio. Yes, we have been taught and studied the way that the contrology sequencing goes, the way that the Ramana sequencing goes, or the Corolla sequencing, but I just never felt fulfilled by that as far back as our days at St. Francis Hospital.
Yep. Agreed. So one of the things that I love about this, and for those of you out there who are instructors, I really want to bring this point up. So much of what comes into a classroom or into programming is just kind of what's in your head, right? The structures you've learned, the ways you put things together, the theoretical foundation, if you want to use those terms, for how you conceive of movement. And the stronger that background is, the more that can really be infused into your teaching. And that's certainly what I've seen you do over the many, many, many years that I've seen you teach. But I think in this environment, that's really interesting.
Thank you for that, Nora. And now the following thought doesn't keep me up at night. I have other things that can keep me up. But the thought about what is the most efficacious way to take 37 or 40 years of a slow, luxurious marinade in the Pilates movement world, and how do we bring that to the legions of enthusiastic people who are teaching group reformer classes? They are clueless about what they don't know, and consequently, they're just teaching the latest sensation that they saw on TikTok. What a train wreck!
Yes, absolutely.
We see that all the time. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've seen, someone want to come in and say, I saw this on Instagram. I saw this on
Here's my
TikTok.
phone.
And they'll say, can we do something like this? I'm like, okay, first of all, let's talk about you for a minute. You're 58 years old. This person is on 2 balls and a Bosu. Yeah, probably not. Probably not. It looks fun. Probably not ideal
today.
for your situation. And is this a goal you really want to try and achieve? And I always try and make a joke out of it, but it's true. That's literally what we're seeing in a lot of these group exercise classes, is it's a keeping up with the Joneses of the other instructors. They did this. I have to make mine even more. I have to make it more this, so I can get more likes or this or that, instead of what's the best that this client needs in front of me. What is exactly what's going to be best for these 12 people in this room right now? And that's what you have to distill. And oftentimes I bet you have to distill it as they're walking in, because energies change. You think you're going to do something, and all of a sudden it's like, nope, I'm going in this other direction because of what I'm feeling and what I'm gathering.
You describe it so well, Brian. And not only that, but it is a great challenge to being present to the moment, to all the flows that you're describing, and to being present in the moment with in real time, with an integration of the analytical aspects of that our training has brought us, and the intuition that our client experiences with our clients have brought us to.
Yeah, that intuition it's everything, isn't it? Because if you're not in tune, then literally you're going through the motions.
Oh, yes, and you're probably going through the motions badly.
Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely.
Doing no one any favors in the class. Yeah. The two greatest compliments that it's not that I live for them, because I live for the experience and would do it no matter what. But the two compliments that mean a great deal to me are like, is it over? It went by so fast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And another one is like, wow, that was really different. I've never done that before.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when, from a neurological standpoint, that's when, for two reasons, that, wow, it went by so fast, that is an indication that the dopamine was working at just the right level of squirtdom.
Right.
Because you engender curiosity, like, what is that? I've never seen that before. Or like, whoa, never felt that before. So it's a good feeling. Yeah.
Love it. So maybe it's a practical question. Do you teach different levels? Like, do you officially have different levels that you teach? And how do you kind of approach that?
Yes. Nora, you and I, and Brian too, we have all cut our teeth, so to speak, in the movement world, teaching for a variety of organizations. Mm-hmm. There was the St. Francis Memorial Hospital Center for Sports and Dance Medicine. Then in my case, there was Western Athletic Clubs with the high-end athletic clubs up and down the West Coast. Then there was Yoga Works. And then there were boutique studios, because I had to make some money and write some books. Okay. But in every single organization had particular guidelines, had a particular company culture. And we were Pilates Mavericks, but we were working within that company culture. Mm-hmm. So it's my experience now, she said irreverently, that I can do whatever the heck that I want. But that's actually not true. It's not true, because I am respectful of each group Pilates studio culture. So that there's certain rules. People have signed up for a particular membership. There's a particular price point. There's certain rules and regulations that I respect. And yes, there are different levels of classes, and I teach all the different levels, and am grateful to do so because I love the challenge. However, so my own guidelines are, so long as I am respecting the guideline, of course, do no harm, and progressing the clients in the room at an appropriate level, I can do whatever the heck I want, because I know that I can put the reformer perpendicular to the carriage, and the other instructors in the organization are going to come and take my class because they want to learn to do that too.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So it's a fine line there, but someone's got to do it. And you see, I have an ulterior motive for going into the group reformer class setting, because it's a phenomenal opportunity during the evolution over the decades since Joseph Pilates brought his work to New York. It's a phenomenal opportunity now more than ever at this intersection of group reformer accessibility and social media to be able to bring all of our decades of experience of movement education and to spread it out.
Mm-hmm.
I'd also say to that, it's not just spread it out. I also find when, I haven't taught a lot of group classes, but I've teach group classes, it's a bit of a testing ground.
Yes.
Right? Because it's one thing when you've got one client or two clients and you're working with them for a long period of time doing privates, and you create a lot of custom work for them because you do. And it's quite a different thing when you've got 12 people, all different shapes and sizes, all different experience levels, et cetera. And you're trying to sort of like, that's when I always find I test out some of the things I've tried with my private clients and say, okay, does this work for 12 people? Okay, worked for them, not so much for them, right? It's another laboratory for understanding when movement's effective, when it's not, who it works for, what the limitations are, all of those things too. And that must be fascinating.
Nora, you described that so beautifully. Sometimes I lament that I don't work in a research lab, but they would never let me in because I couldn't do it.
And you do.
But we work like you described. We work in a movement laboratory. That's what we're doing. Yeah.
Yeah.
And we're always learning. That's the thing. If we keep our curiosity, and that's what I respect most about what you've done, because I don't know if I would have the cojones, so to speak, to completely change everything that I've been doing, building my studio and all of this, to go into a completely different environment. Yes, the tools are there. Yes, the knowledge is there. Yes, you're still using all of your background and everything that you've gathered because you can't not. That's who you are. But going into a completely different situation and saying, I want to relearn how to do this and apply what I have into a different setting. And that is fascinating to me.
Well, thank you for that compliment. Realize that I have not abandoned the individual client.
Of course.
I live in a customized movement studio with everything that Balanced Body has made since the 80s. So, and I have, fascinating individual clients who come here. But then it's true. I need to get out of my own box or my own polyhedron or whatever, yurt or whatever it is, and get out to the center of the bell curve and see how it is out there.
I love that term too, for the middle of the bell curve. Sorry, Nora.
Yeah.
I love that because I hate to say this, but people who come to see us, especially, they can afford to come to see us. We don't charge $25 a session. We charge what we charge, and it's for a certain type of population. But when you do offer a group exercise class, that price point comes down so much that it becomes much more accessible to so much of the population that now you really are training the average person and not just the elite. And that is really giving your gift to more people.
Well, Brian, I hope so, because, because we've been, between the three of us, we've been given many gifts, and it's a big opportunity to be able to show our gratitude. However, I also want to mention that I probably am showing my elitist tendencies when I talk about teaching at the center of the bell curve, because I really have no idea about economic realities. However, I do, when I go, for example, to get my hair blown out yesterday evening, I had the good fortune of filming for Pilates on Tour in Santa Barbara on Tuesday. And then all the hairspray, all the products were still in, and it would not have been a good look if I came to meet you with that. So I went to the neighborhood blow dry and was asking the person who had the stylist who had recently had a baby, asked her if she was back to her workouts, and she loves to go to a neighborhood place where it's heated rooms, and you have options. You can do weights, or you can follow a video for Pilates mat, or you can do other things. And she said yes. It's just Pilates studios. It's just so expensive for a membership. And I said, yes, it is. And then I gave her my last name as a 30-day free trial so she can do Pilates Anytime mat work, mat with props. But, and then the esthetician who's dyeing the brows, she says, God, I would love to take reformer classes, but they're so expensive. So I do want to be realistic and respectful that we still have more work to do to make our knowledge accessible.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Absolutely. So I also want to bring up, Elizabeth, I'm looking at the books on your shoulder there. And I know one of the big projects that you and Madeline Black have been working on for quite some time is this Pilates applications for health conditions, right? Two volume set. And I was looking through those the other day, looking at all the case studies. Amazing work that you two have done. So those of you who don't know, this is really a series of case studies on very specific conditions and how exactly precisely they were worked with in the Pilates environment. It's really wonderful to see. These are the exercises that I did in the first session, and then the next, and this is where I ended up. Very detailed work. So tell us a little bit about that, if you will, kind of what your impulse was for that, how it's turned out, what your thoughts are.
Thank you so much, Nora and Brian, for this forum to bring attention to our 2-volume book from Handspring Publishing, Pilates Applications for Health Conditions. There's never been a book like it in the Pilates world in terms of the detailed documentation for, say, 30-some different health conditions. And I dare say there will never be another book like it. Yeah. Which is probably just as well, okay, because Madeline and I are each at around 4 decades of experience in the Pilates world, and it took from the initial discussion with our Handspring commissioning editor to the publication in May 2025, it was a good 7-year arc. And both of us, I know Madeline will be a guest on your podcast, Moving Conversations, coming up. But each of us would like to make a contribution to acknowledge the field as it has been and to move the field into what we consider to be some beneficial or advantageous directions. Because Pilates is such a vast tent, such a vast umbrella, such a vast landscape probably, that it's not just one direction, but a plethora, okay? And we recognize that although the commissioning editors from Handspring, the founders of Handspring, had asked us to write a book about Pilates research, Madeline said, well, that would be a very short book.
Right.
Hence we brainstormed and decided that a series of case studies that detail 12 Pilates sessions customized for an individual client with a specific health condition with the observable changes regarding the client's gait efficiency, that would be the template for each chapter of the book.
So yes, this is, again, if any of you out there, since this is Moving Conversations and many of you are rehab oriented, this is an invaluable resource for you. Even just taking one case study, maybe for a condition of some client you're dealing with, maybe some other condition you're interested in, and looking it through. One of the challenges I find in teaching movement is finding the logic and understanding the logic of where I start, how I progress, where I end up. Based on what you see, your initial assessment, then you make some choices, then you reassess, you make some other choices. At some point, you hope that you get the outcome you're aiming for. And this is just so, it's just amazing to read through them and to start to get a feeling for that logic. Because I think that's a lot of what you've developed over the many years of working with clients. I think all of us on this screen have. And that's where that's the hard thing to pass on, I think, is the kind of clinical reasoning or the critical reasoning and the logic that you find in things and the pathways that you follow. So anyway, I love how that book lays that out. Those books lay that out so well. And again, somebody can have that my client didn't go in this direction, went in that direction, but at least you see where the decision trees are. It's a little bit detailed there, but you understand what I'm trying to say. And I really like that takes that approach to help to teach people the logic of working with complex situations.
And Nora, we've talked about this a number of times on the podcast. We do case studies on a regular basis, especially if we talk about a specific, issue, medical condition, whatever. We'll bring up, here's what I did in this situation. We don't go into as much detail as your books do, where you'll take, that many sessions, but it gives people, again, that thought tree, that here's what I was thinking and here's what I saw. And after we did this for a while, here was a change. So I chose to do this on top of that. Here's a progression. Oh, that progression didn't work. Here's a regression to get to the next progression. So, and I find that invaluable to see what other people are doing, because I can only experience what I've done to my clients. So to have that additional reference is fascinating.
And to bring it back to our topic at hand, thinking of that same logic being applied to group classes, right? Because some of that does apply to group classes, not in the same way, but I'm assuming you have some classes that have been, many of the members anyway are continuous. You've seen them for weeks after week after week. And so I'm assuming you do develop some sense of direction or some sense of where you're trying to take this cohort. Is that how you think about it, or?
I quickly disabused myself of that opportunity for thought,
Right.
because it's just the nature of the Pilates studio business, group reformer business, that there's constant churn.
Yeah.
People will join for a month and then they leave town. People join for a month and then they get something else happens to them, a family member, something, So there may be certainly some continuity of people that I can pretty much count on seeing at a particular hour, in a particular day. But just don't think about getting too comfortable with the class plan, because who should show up yesterday but the loveliest individual who says, well, this is my second class. I came to the intro and I'm coming because I have hip pain. And I went, well, okay then, and just started asking her some questions about this hip pain. And turns out, yes, she has 3 children under the age of 6, and she's pregnant now. And so there you go. And
there's a lot right there.
I know. And I would so compassionately like to turn this into an individual session, but that's not what the rest of the group paid for,
Right.
Yeah, so.
Yeah.
No, we were talking about that before we hit record, that I've tried to do small classes based on a single condition, like a rotator cuff, so everybody in the class has a similar thing. So you can sort of gauge everybody towards certain exercises, and you have to modify, even among that. But you can't do that to a group of 12, and everybody has different issues. Everybody has different things. Like you said, this woman's pregnant. Not only does she have hip issues, but her body is going to be changing in significant ways over the next so many months. And, compared to a 60-year-old who's in the class who really wants to just stay healthy, compared to so-and-so, so-and-so. There's so much that you have to take in a group environment that you can't really specialize that much on a single person. It makes it challenging.
Yeah, you say it so well, Brian. And that reminds me that I must disabuse myself of the assumption that it's so hard to get over, that we are not a series of structurally and neurologically, we're not a series of separate, isolated parts for which movement should be choreographed in an analytical way. It's like, nope, that doesn't work here at all.
Yeah. So Elizabeth, for the group reformer instructors out there, and even just those teaching group classes of any kind, a couple of questions about strategy. So have you ever had to basically tell somebody this class is not appropriate for them? Like, have you ever had to kind of fire somebody in a class? Or if you have somebody who really shouldn't be there for whatever reason, but they're there anyway, and you've got to kind of manage them. How do you deal with situations like that if that's ever come up?
Well, Nora, it's so true. And in the cases I can think of, the mismatch of person in group is that the person was coming to the reformer class from what I could tell to deal with a traumatic event or traumatic experience from their past, which may or may not have had physical ramifications, but they just could not be present in a group reformer setting to keep themselves safe.
Mm-hmm.
So that shows up, so in that case, it does take me back to my work in community mental health. My first job after my undergraduate years at Stanford, I worked for a community mental health agency, and in which there was a great deal of emphasis on the healing community. So in that case, I just recognized that it was important to telegraph to the group that I was going to be a responsible teacher so that they would get their money's worth, and that I would also model to be a compassionate individual for the person who was hurting, and that we would all get through this and we would feel better as a result of it. And then I would discuss with the management about how to redirect this person. That's maybe an extreme example, but given the state of the world, it's not that extreme anymore.
It's not.
No, it's not a surprise.
Yeah.
I think we've all been through that in some way, shape, or form. I mean, just even in privates, how many times has someone walked in the door who is not there? They shouldn't be there. They
should
really
be with a different professional. It starts like psychiatrist with a prescription pad.
Okay,
sorry.
We definitely have those.
I've had that experience.
But we get these calls, or someone comes in, and it's hard sometimes to redirect them to where they should be because they so badly want to be there. And in a situation like yours, it's a challenge, I think, sometimes to be able to redirect and say, this may not be the best choice for you. Maybe you would be much better off doing something else. Then you can come to me. Then it's going to become appropriate, but it may not be the most appropriate thing for you today. And that redirection can be very challenging to navigate.
I remember one client who came in, and fortunately, she came in at a time when it was just a private, but she came in at a time when there wasn't anybody else in the studio, which I was really glad about, because she was acting very erratically. Like, clearly she was having a bit of a mental breakdown. And I knew she was somebody. She'd mentioned that she was on antidepressants and other things, and clearly there was medication involved in keeping her stable. And I basically said, have you had a medication change? I mean, I asked her point blank. And she's like, oh, I decided I didn't need any of those things. And I'm like, oh, no.
Whoa.
Right. And because she was really she was looping, she was obsessing, this was not a good situation. And she wasn't safe at all. So I was just had her lying on the trap table, probably doing feeding straps with long yellow springs. I mean, something very minimal just to keep her moving and talking, but not unsafe at all. And I basically, at the end of the session, I said, unfortunately, we were alone and I could do this. And I said, you need to go back to your psychiatrist and you need to work on your meds. I said, from my perspective, you're very unbalanced today. And I'm concerned for you and you need to go do that. And she took my advice, which doesn't always happen. But that was an extreme moment of that. You need to do something other than be here now. You need to go do something else. Yeah.
It's so fortunate, Nora, that she came to you because you could direct her kindly.
And she was alone, she lived alone and all that. And I don't know who else she was seeing who would have recognized she was falling off the cliff. It's here, why don't you go back on the cliff?
And sometimes it's just about being with someone who cares about you, even if it's just in some small way, shape, or form. You wanted to keep her safe, not only physically, but you realized that mentally she wasn't safe. And I think we all go through that. I've had a number of clients who have had a similar situation. And it's just, the client's just not right when they come to you, whether it be physically, mentally, emotionally, something's not there. And it's good for us to acknowledge that and then to point them in the right direction with love and compassion and not with get out. It's okay, what can I do to help this person today? What is the smartest thing I can do to help them today, but keep them safe and still stay within my scope of practice?
Exactly. So anything else you'd like to add, Elizabeth? Anything else about this unique experience you're in, this wonderful movement laboratory you're in, where every day is different? Every class is different?
Yeah. Well, I do thrive on novelty, but I realize that the next responsibility is to codify some of these discoveries in a way that they can be not in a 2-volume book, but in a way that they can be these discoveries about how to bring 40 years of expertise in movement to the group Pilates setting, so that the information can be accessible to enthusiastic instructors who want to improve their professionalism. Yeah.
And I understand you've just done some filming at Pilates Anytime. It seemed like it was on this topic.
It was indeed. I realized that I sort of backed into it with eyes closed, but I realized what one of the themes of 2026 is. For a couple of the Pilates on tours, I'm going to be teaching a workshop for instructors that's how to teach group performer classes with intelligence, integrity, and humor.
Nice.
So that's a workshop that's in development. The classes that I just filmed for Pilates Anytime were specifically to they came in well under the 50-minute mark. There's a cardio reformer cardio leg and arm jumps that demonstrates how to stay safely in zone 2 cardio and keep all the different aspects of the neuromyofascial system engaged safely. And another one of the classes is how to use different planes of motion, not just the sagittal plane that the reformer invites so well, but this class is called Creating New Strong Connections. The title is not Reformer and Box with No Springs. I figure people would go nope, not looking at that class. The company won't let me teach that.
Right.
So that's now the third way that third channel that I have to codify this material now. And this brings me to a recent enthusiasm is there's a third book in the works for Handspring that will be, the manuscript is due July 2026, a few months hence. And it is bringing the most recent research of the last decade to movement and to specifically to the greater Pilates landscape. What
Nice.
I am so thrilled about is a lecture from a webinar lecture from Carla Stecco of the Stecco dynasty, and who's the world's leading researcher at the University of Padua in Italy. And Carla Stecco recently gave a lecture hosted by the Fascia Research Society, in which she describes how different sensory experiences from the visceral fascia, the deep fascia, and the superficial fascia, all of these sensory experiences give different input that our nervous system integrates best it can to create a sense of self. And I was just awestruck, because this is what I've been trying to do in the movement classes that I teach 2 hours every day, 7 days a week.
Fascinating.
That is. I'm going to check that out too.
Do that.
Section. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Wow.
Because, Nora and Brian, as movement educators, we just do the best we can, speaking for herself, in a movement laboratory. But there's all these podcasts, all these webinars from all these esteemed researchers. Now, many of them are not teaching movement educators. They are publishing in order to get tenure. But, but we've got to read that and figure out how to bring it to our people.
Absolutely.
And that's so much what you've done, Elizabeth. I think that's a great place to wrap this up, because if anybody has taken many, many, many of the advances in movement science and how the body works and anatomy and biomechanics and myofascial work, blah, 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 it's you. And have really taken that, absorbed and digested the research, and then explored and experimented with ways to bring that into actual movement practice. Because that's not what most of these people do. Most of them do research of one kind or another, and it's dry or it's clinical or it's whatever it is. But very few of them have taken that step to bring it into movement. And that really is, in many ways, the unique skill that you have brought to this world, which is just so incredibly valuable. And I think it just expands all of our way of thinking, and certainly has for the last 40 years. And I expect it will for the next 30. So thank you. Thank you so much for joining us and bringing that to the topic of group reformer classes and many other things. It's a pleasure speaking with you.
And before you go, I want our listeners to be able to access you through your social media and things like that. Do you have Instagram or any social media accounts you'd like to promote?
Well, no, I don't. However, they can certainly register to take my movement classes, which are recorded, 8 to 9 a.m. Central Time, 9 to 10 a.m. Central Time. Every day it is a different prop. You can access these on Be Well, Stay Well / Elizabeth Larkam. You can register for that. Yeah. Thank you for that opportunity, Brian.
Perfect. Absolutely. And please give us the name of your book again, and where's the best place that we can obtain that?
Yes. Pilates Applications for Health Conditions, Handspring Publishing, published May 2025, co-edited by Madeline Black and Elizabeth Larkam. You can certainly get it from the Handspring website, and you can get it from Amazon.
Perfect.
And you can also get my first book, 2017, Fascia in Motion, Fascia-Focused Movement for Pilates, which is timeless, also Handspring and Amazon. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So we will put those in the show notes. So don't worry about writing this down if you're in the car driving, going, oh no, I got to pause this. I got to write it down. So don't worry about that. They'll be in the show notes. thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it. And thank you for listening. We always appreciate it. You can always reach out to us at our Gmail account, movingcombos@gmail.com, and check us out on Instagram and YouTube under my name, is where you can actually see this and see, all of our wonderful faces, so to speak, talking all about this. So thank you guys so much. Thank you, Elizabeth. And for Nora St. John, I'm Brian Ritchie. We'll see you guys next week.
Bye, guys.